How's everyone doing? Welcome back to another episode of The Banker Next Door. I am your host, Dr. Joe Berquist. Today, I have an episode for everyone that is a little sobering, and I've got two articles from the Epoch Times that I want to share with everybody, and it really has to do related around public schools and the failing of the public school system. And so I want to share these articles with everyone. They are a little jaw-dropping, to say the least. These articles have been troubling me for a few weeks now, but I want to share these with you, and then I will comment on them afterwards. So I'll let them kind of tell their own story, so to speak. So let's take a look at this first one here. So latest education scores reveal failure of regulatory accountability and DEI. So the latest results from the National Assessment of Educational Progress, which is known as the NAEP, are nothing short of catastrophic. They are an indictment of an education system that has been subject to decades of top-down accountability and has consumed trillions of dollars, more and more each year, only to deliver worse results. On September 9th, the Department of Education released the 2024 NAEP scores for 12th grade math and reading and 8th grade science. The results are ugly. They show that U.S. schools are failing in their most basic mission, ensuring that students actually learn. Just 35% of 12th graders are proficient in reading, the lowest score since the NAEP began in 1992. Stunningly, the math scores were even worse, with only 22% proficient, the lowest score since the current test began in 2005. In science, barely 31% of 8th graders met the proficiency bar for their grade. To put this in perspective, researchers commonly equate 10 points on NAEP math and reading assessments to about 1 year of learning. Since the early 1990s, 12th grade reading scores have dropped by 10 points. That means that today's graduates, on average, leave high school reading a full year behind their peers from 3 decades ago. In math, 12th grade students are about half a year behind their counterparts in 2015. Failed promises of spending and regulation. So for decades, technocratic reformers and policymakers have promised that a combination of higher spending and top-down regulatory accountability would reverse educational stagnation. Instead, scores have cratered. Some may point to COVID-19 as the culprit, and we will, and we'll get to that in a minute. But the truth is that the downward trend began long before the pandemic. Math achievement for 17-year-olds peaked in the late 2000s and has been sliding ever since. Reading, too, was declining well before 2020. The pandemic merely accelerated a collapse already in motion. Achievement gaps are also widening, calling into question diversity, equity, and inclusion practices that were supposed to close gaps by helping the most disadvantaged students. The new NAEP results show that the gap between the highest and lowest performing quintiles has widened to 111 points today from 84 points in 1992. Throwing money at the problem hasn't helped either. Inflation-adjusted spending per pupil has more than doubled over the past 40 years as performance has declined. The reality is that it's not how much money we spend that matters. Secretary of Education Linda McMahon said success isn't about how much money we spend, but who controls the money and where that money is invested. In other words, it's about incentives, and the incentives embedded in our current education system are perverse. Bureaucracies face no serious consequences for failure, while parents have little recourse when schools don't deliver. By contrast, Catholic schools aren't subject to the same top-down regulations as district schools. Instead, like other private schools, Catholic schools are held directly accountable to parents. The result, Catholic school students significantly outperform their district school peers. On the 2024 NAEP assessments for 4th and 8th grade students released earlier this year, Catholic school students outperformed district school students by a grade level in 4th grade math, a grade and a half in 4th grade reading, and approximately 2 grade levels in both subjects in 8th grade. Real accountability is bottom up, not top down. We've tried accountability from the top down, federal mandates, state testing regimes, elaborate school grading systems, and it hasn't worked. Regulations should be mistaken for accountability. Real accountability comes from the bottom up through transparency and choice. It means giving families clear, transparent information about school performance, and it means giving them the power to act on that information through genuine school choice. Money should follow students, not systems. When parents can take their children and the funding attached to them to schools that actually work, incentives shift. Schools that serve families well thrive. Schools that don't are forced to change or close. This is the clearest path to reversing decades of stagnation and decline. America's students have already lost too much time and too many opportunities. The latest NAEP scores are a national alarm bell. The only question is whether we will keep hitting the snooze button or finally wake up. And now I'm going to share you another story. This one even worse. And just look at the title of this article. She couldn't read her own diploma. Why public schools pass students but fail society. Even with record high per student spending, the broken status quo has left 1 in 5 Americans functionally illiterate. Schools refuse to reform. I want to read that again. Even with record high per student spending, the broken status quo has left 1 in 5 Americans functionally illiterate. Schools refuse to reform. Let's read here. A 19-year-old college student is suing her former high school for negligence because she graduated despite being unable to read or write. How about that? The student, Alicia Ortiz, graduated from Hartford Public Schools in the spring of 2024 with honors. She graduated with honors and yet was unable to read or write. She earned a scholarship to attend the University of Connecticut, where she's studying public policy. I don't know how she's doing that. But while she was in high school, she had to use speak-to-text apps to help her read and write essays. And despite years of advocating for support for her literacy struggles, her school never addressed them. Her story is shocking, but unfortunately it isn't isolated. At 24 Illinois public schools, not a single student can read at grade level. Nationwide, 54% of the U.S. adult population reads at or below the 6th grade level. Put a different way, only 46% of U.S. adults gained even a middle school level mastery of literacy, let alone high school or collegiate levels. In a first world country in which we spend nearly $16,000 per student per year to educate our children, that is a horrifying statistic. Literacy is supposed to be the bedrock of a free and liberally educated society. As the Washington Post motto so aptly reminds us, democracy dies in darkness. Illiteracy is a form of darkness, and an illiterate populace is not one equipped to handle the demands of a world filled with forms, papers, and words, let alone be the voting citizens of a democratic society. So what do literacy stats actually mean? Officially, the United States reports a basic literacy rate of 99%, which should perhaps be called into question if students such as Ortiz can graduate with honors and still be illiterate. But basic literacy is a bit of a sales pitch. It sounds impressive, but in practice, basic literacy skills means a K 3rd grade level of reading. K through 3, 3rd grade level of reading, things such as Hop and Pop and Amelia Bedelia. Functional literacy is what actually matters. The ability to read and understand things like forms, instructions, job applications, and other forms of text you'll encounter in your day-to-day life. It measures both technical reading skills and comprehension, your ability to decipher the words and your ability to discern their meaning. An estimated 21% of U.S. adults, about 43 million Americans, are functionally illiterate, meaning that they have difficulty reading and comprehending instructions and filling out forms. A functionally illiterate U.S. adult is unable to complete tasks such as reading job descriptions or filling out paperwork for Social Security and Medicaid. Perhaps worse still is the statistic that 54% of U.S. adult population reads at or below a 6th grade level. Most of us don't think about reading in terms of grade levels, so this statistic feels intuitively bad, but is practically meaningless. What is a 6th grade level? Books written at the 6th grade level are intended in both literacy and comprehension skills for 11 and 12-year-olds. Think of books like A Wrinkle in Time, Percy Jackson and the Olympians, and The Guyver. They're good stories, but they don't require the same vocabulary and mental acuity as making sense of a tax form. This is an excerpt from The Guyver. Gabriel's breathing was even and deep. Jonas liked having him there, though he felt guilty about the secret. Each night he gave memories to Gabriel, memories of boat rides and picnics in the sun, memories of soft rainfall against window panes, memories of dancing barefoot on a damp lawn. More complex than Dick and Jane or Hop on Pop, obviously, but this isn't an adult level of comprehension. If your reading abilities cap out here, you're going to encounter a lot of text in your day-to-day life that's difficult to decipher. Often things that are important for you to be able to comprehend, such as the terms of a lease agreement or the instructions on a medication. And then the article goes on to ask, basically, has it always been like this? Kind of. America's literacy woes, a brief history, and it kind of goes through more on that. And then it ends up there. But let's see here. But I'm just going to read this at the end here. Great inflation, social promotion, and a general disinterest in individual outcomes keeps kids shuffling along the conveyor belt. Ortiz used speech-to-text apps to help her write her high school essays, which were strong enough for her to graduate from the Hartford Public Schools with honors. Like Ortiz, students keep getting passed through the system, passing tests and advancing from grade to grade without ever actually learning the core skills they need to survive in the world. This is how we've ended up with a population in which 54% of U.S. adults don't have the literacy skills to read this article, and with a country that will very quickly drop behind the world in its overall ability if we don't turn things around. So I've been highly disturbed by these articles. And again, none of this is shocking, right? Like we've all read these things this has been a long time coming. But I think we're at a point that this has really become a national crisis. And why is this such a big thing? You may ask yourself, Joe, this is a podcast about banking and about finance and the business world and all that. Okay, well, guess what? In the future, we all need customers and we all need employees, and we need people who are eventually going to hopefully lead these organizations that we all work for in the financial services world. Well, guess what? If a huge chunk of the population is functionally illiterate and doesn't know how to read and write and can't do the job, you got a big problem there. You're not going to be able to find the talent and the people that you need to effectively grow and sustain your business and your companies. And they're not going to go start other companies to become your customers. That's why this is such a huge deal. Now, I talked about, COVID at the beginning. Now, I had some personal experiences with this. I'm not going to, name the names of schools or anything like that, but I, taught part-time at a school, and it was basically like a volunteer work, if you will. I saw the effect that COVID had on these kids firsthand with 10, 11, and 12-year-olds. I encountered literally 10 and 11-year-olds that could barely read. I mean, I had to sit there and walk them along, and it was, very sad and very frustrating. And I wish that I could have done a lot more to help those kids and work with those kids. But it was a very eye-opening experience for me that basically said, we have a major problem here that has to be fixed. I think a lot of us understand the issues at hand. It's not money. It is not. We're the richest nation in the world. We spend, as you saw in the one article, on average, we spend about $16,000 per student. In some areas, I know it's a lot more than that. I believe in like Philadelphia, for example, I believe the average school student gets $33,000 a year. So it's not a money issue. It's the system. It's how kids are being taught. It's what the emphasis. Obviously, the major emphasis on all this DEI stuff has been a complete and utter failure. And it's hurting kids. It is dramatically hurting kids. We're just going to push them through the system. We're just going to push them through the school. We don't care if they can read or write or do basic mathematics. We're just going to push them through, and we're going to graduate them with honors and make sure they get that scholarship to go off to college, so we can still get our federal funding, our federal dollars, because, we sent all the kids off to college. Is it any wonder that 60% of kids don't complete college? Is it any wonder that your average college student takes 5.5 years to graduate? Yeah, it's not 4 years, ladies and gentlemen. It's 5.5 years to the average college student to get through college. Again, this is such a huge thing. And I hope that people will watch this episode. I hope you will listen to this episode. I hope you will share this episode. And I hope that this will wake a few people up to the reality that our public school system is in a major major epidemic of failure, a major failure. And we have to do something to fix this. We have to. So, all right. Well, I will wrap this episode up by saying, if you like this episode, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, especially share this episode. Remember, we are on YouTube, Rumble, and all major podcast platforms. Please be sure to leave your comments down below, and I would love to hear if people have some comments on this one. Have you had similar experiences? Do you see similar things out there? I would love to hear back from you. And remember, as always, make sure to check out some of the other content on the channel. But with that being said, I hope everyone has a good day out there. I thank you for listening, and I will see you again real soon. Thanks a lot.